Now student, here we will discuss about an important topic in the supply chapter, that is change in quantity supplied and change in supply. Okay, this is a very important question. Change in quantity supplied and change in supply. Change in quantity supply, we can say movement along the supply curve. Change in quantity supplied. Change in quantity supplied, that means movement along the supply curve. That is why we write or. Okay, change in quantity supplied, we can write movement along the supply curve, or change in supply means shift in supply curve. Change in supply means shift in supply curve. Change in quantity supplied means movement along the supply curve. So now we will discuss about what is change in quantity supplied or movement along supply curve, and shift in supply, that means change in supply. The first we will discuss one by one. Change in quantity supply. Change in quantity. Change in quantity supplied. What is change in quantity supplied? Change in quantity supplied means changes along the supply curve or movement along the supply curve. Okay, so suppose this is supply curve. Price I am taking the vertical axis and quantity horizontal axis. Okay, suppose I am taking a point here. Okay, on the supply curve, suppose I am taking a point A. On point A, price is P, quantity is Q. Okay, at point A. Now if you move along the supply curve, if you move up and take a point B, okay, then this B point represents more price, more quantity, P1, Q1. Okay, so when we move along the supply curve upward, okay, when you move along the supply curve upward, that means price increases, supply increases. Price increase, supply increase. This is called extension in supply. This is called extension. Okay, this is called extension. This is called extension in supply. This is called extension in supply. This is a part of change in quantity supplied. Okay, extension in supply. There are two parts. Number one is extension in supply, and another part is when you move along the supply curve downward. Okay, suppose first I am in point B. Okay, at point B, price is P1, quantity is Q1. Now when you move along the supply curve downward and comes to A, then price falls, supply falls. Price falls, supply falls. This is called contraction in supply. This is called contraction in supply. Okay, so change in quantity supply has two parts: extension in supply and contraction in supply. What is extension in supply? When you move along the supply curve upward, it is called extension in supply. When you move along the supply curve downward, it is called contraction in supply. Okay, but you must keep in your mind that change in quantity supply, the word change in quantity supply, that means movement of supply along the supply curve, okay, movement along the supply curve. Now change in supply. Now change in supply. What is change in supply? Change in supply means shift in supply. Okay, change in supply means, just I discuss that change in supply. Change in supply means shift in supply. Okay, so supply curve, suppose I am taking supply curve. This is supply. Suppose this is supply curve. Okay, now supply curve may shift to rightward. This is your right side, so it is rightward. This is your left side, this is leftward. So change in supply means shift in supply. Shift in supply curve. Shift in supply curve. So if your supply curve shift right side, supply will increase. Suppose earlier your supply is SS, now if it comes to right side, then your supply increases. Why increases? So I'm taking a point here, P, price. At this price, before your supply up to this Q, when supply curve shift to rightward, the same price, your quantity will increase. Okay, when your supply curve is this, okay, when your supply curve is this, at point at P price, you supplied this Q quantity. But when supply curve shift rightward at price P, now you are selling more quantity. You are supplying more quantity Q1. So when the supply curve shift rightward, that means supply increases. And when suppose the supply curve is this, yes, okay, and when your supply curve shift leftward, so price is here, quantity this side. So when supply curve shift to left side, suppose S2 S2, earlier supply curve is SS, now when shift to left side it becomes S2 S2. So when supply curve shift to leftward, supply decreases. Why? So when taking a price P, at price P, earlier your price is Q, earlier your supply, that means quantity is Q. When supply curve shift to left side, when supply curve shift to left side, your quantity becomes this much only, but earlier your supply up to this much. Okay, so your supply decrease. So shift in supply, is two types. One is increase in supply, one is increase in supply, that means supply curve shift to rightward or right side, or decrease in supply, that means supply curve shift to left side, supply curve shift to left side or leftward. So there are two things you must have to understand: that change in quantity supplied, and change in supply. Change in quantity supplied means movement along the supply curve, that means extension and contraction in supply, and change in supply means shift in supply curve, that means supply curve shift rightward or supply curve shift leftward. Okay, rightward means increase in supply, leftward means decrease in supply. Okay, in my next video we will make a difference between change in quantity supplied and change in supply, and then this chapter will be completed.